working on the interior and I'm just trying to find the right color gray for the interior. So I thought, hey, why don't I just come out here and check it against what we have here. Mine is an 88. The colors on the interior are a little bit different, but the grays are very close. And here I'm looking at what I have here, and it's the Tamiya light gray. Seems to be a pretty good match for the gray of the interior panels. And if we look at it, well, here we're a little dark, but as you can see, the grays there seem to match very, very nicely. So I think we have a winner here in our Tamiya light gray for the interior panels in the dash. So now, got to get the painting. Now we're going to start painting the interior. I already have all the parts primed, and now we're just going to take the airbrush and just start adding color. This is the Tamiya light gray, which just seems to be a really good match for the Fiero. It may not be an exact same color as mine, but I do believe that the 88 grays were a bit darker than what were in the earlier years. So I'm going to go with this and see how it all turns out. So far, it's looking pretty good. So just hang while I paint. At this point, I'm starting to second guess my choice of color for the seats, as the light gray works great for the interior, but I seem to remember the seat side bolsters being darker than the rest of the gray in the car. And from the photos that he sent me, that seems to be what it looks like. So we're going to have to revisit that. But in the meanwhile, we're going to start painting the rest of the interior. And when I decided to go with using the rubber black, as opposed to just painting the instrument cluster and the rest of the dash black, as if you look really closely, they're not black. They're a very, very, very dark gray. And I think that the rubber black conveys that coloring better than just using straight up black. So, time to keep painting. Now I've masked off the entire interior except for the one area that I have to paint. Speaking of masking, I did make a video about tape. It's the one thing that nobody really seems to talk about. If you're curious, it's on the channel. Check it out. Now I'm back onto the seats. I've decided that the gray that I used, the interior gray, was way too light. So now I'm going to use the rubber black and see how that comes out, as I think that's going to give me the color that I'm looking for. Now that I've got my color for the seats, I'm going to use the same rubber black, and I'm going to darken up all the recesses in the seat. This is known as pre-shading, as when I apply the lighter color over it, the darker areas will remain a slightly darker tint and give shadows that make the seats look a little more realistic in all the recesses. It'll also give the seat a sort of a used, worn-in appearance, which is much more realistic. now that I'm done with the darker color and all my appreciating, I'm going to start applying the lighter color, which is a very light gray. What I do is I start in the center of each panel and I darken that or lighten it with the light gray, and then just kind of feather it out toward the edges, as this is going to give the appearance of the center of it having color and the edges and the recesses all having shadows, because they're going to be a little bit darker than what's going to be seen on the larger patches of the material. Then I'm going to vary the color a little bit on the larger patches, just to give it sort of a worn in look. Not worn out, just used, and you can tell that somebody's been sitting in this thing and enjoying some good road time. Now, once I have my lights and my darks situated, then what I do is I spray very, very lightly over the entire area just to sort of blend in my lights and my darks, so that it's a gradual fade from light to dark and not just a stark dark line in the middle of the light colors. Here's another look at how I do this. I'm going to zoom in really close, and that way you guys will get a really good look and you can see how the color just starts to build up. Here's a really good example of how I just darken in the center of each panel, so it almost looks like it's got a glowing effect on it. And I go do that for every panel on the seat, from the seat back to the bottom cushion. Just darkening in the centers, so that you can see how the edges and all the recesses are still very, very dark. I then start to fill in the color into all of the dark areas. But I'm doing this very gradually, as I'm just building the color up, because I don't want to eliminate the darker areas. I just want to kind of blend them in, to have the lighter areas fade into the darker areas. So that's just a very delicate blending procedure that takes a little bit of practice to do, but once you get it, it actually works really nicely and it's a lot of fun. Now, how much wear and tear you want to show on your seat depends on how much color you put down and how much of the pre-shading, the darker color underneath, you let show through. While I'm looking just for a seat that's been used and not a seat that's worn out, I'm going to really bring my colors a little closer together and just blend them in a little bit more. So after I get my tones where I want them, then I'm just going to go over the entire light area of the seat with a very light misting of the light gray, to just kind of bring all those colors together. I know it looks like the airbrush isn't spraying anything at all, but believe me, it is. This is where you really want to go with a very, very light touch on the paint at this point, because this is the time when you go and you overspray the entire seat just to blend the colors in. But you have to be careful, because if you spray too much, you can wipe out all the work you just did. Now, normally at this point in the video, I would just speed this up, put a little music on, and blow right through the painting. But I think it's important to show the amount of paint that I'm putting down and how light I'm actually spraying. So I want you guys to see in real time exactly how long this process takes to get the color to even out, while not eliminating all the shadows that you want to put in there. So, like I said, it takes a little practice, and you know, sometimes even I still get it wrong. But as long as you're patient and take your time, you should be able to blow right through this, and it gives your models a much more realistic look. Okay, now that I'm done with the painting, I give everything a nice coating of Tamiya semi-gloss clear, as I wanted to have the dull sheen of the plastics and the vinyl that GM used in this period. I don't want a super high gloss, as none of the materials in the Fiero were super high glossy plastics or vinyl. Okay guys, and this is the result of everything we've done so far. As I said, you can see the sheen of the vinyl and the plastics that GM used of this era. That the semi-gloss, once it dries, leaves on the surfaces. You can also see the coloring of the seats. You can see the shadowing, which gives it a much more realistic appearance. Makes it a little more scale correct and more three-dimensional. Also helps to tell a little bit of a story, as opposed to just being, flat colored seats. Now you have seats that show that they've been around. They've lived a little bit of a life. Now, one other step that I didn't go over while I was painting was that I also lightened up the dark areas of the seats, just to kind of show where light would hit it, so that they're not just totally black and you can't see any detail. So I did lay a little bit of, let me see if I can use my little pointer here. I sprayed very lightly the white here and here and here, just to give the look of light reflecting off the material, so that when the car is all closed up, you'll be able to see it and it'll look like a natural reflection, almost like if I've scaled down the sunlight that's coming in through the windshield. I also laid a little bit up here, a little bit on the top there, on the edges, just where the sun would hit it, to give it much more of a realistic look once the car is all together. Now we still have a lot of work to do on this interior. We have to lay down our carpets, we have to do all the panel faces, instrument cluster, finish the steering wheel. Also got a few more extras that I'm adding to this, including mat pockets. I'm going to carpet the doors and the floors as they were in the real car. And then we're going to add some of Greg's personal requests. So I'm going to leave it here, as this is part one of the interior. As I'm going to try to keep my videos a little bit shorter. I know that the last couple have been a little bit on the long side, because there's a lot of info with everything I'm doing, and I want to make sure that Greg sees everything that's going into his build. So, like I did with the engine and the chassis, I'm going to break this up into a couple of parts, and this is going to be the end of part one of the interior. So stay tuned for part two. Lots more to come with all sorts of, this is where all the custom work is going to start coming in, as far as what Greg requested for this build. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this one. I'm going to leave it right here, and I guess I will see you on the next one. Oh, before I go, let me just remind you guys, I still have shop cards available. You guys can email me if you want me to send you one out, and I'll be happy to do it. And also follow me on Onyx Models on Facebook. That's my models page, where you get to see more pictures and different things concerning the builds that I'm doing here. And New York Comic Con is in this weekend, so I'm going to try and get this video up this weekend. But there may not be another one until the following weekend, as I'm going to be very busy with the Comic Con. And I'll be posting up a lot of stuff about that. Alright guys, see you on the next one.